Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, many of people have been recruited and onboarded online, and some of you listening out there have secured a new role, and yet several months later, you've still not met your colleagues face to face. And I recently wrote an article for Cyber News about how Gen Z don't find this daunting. In fact, they're loving this and have no plans to ever work in an office 5 days a week with zero flexibility. And earlier this year, I also spoke with a company called Hirect, which is a job platform that connects startup founders, business owners, recruiters, and HR heads directly to job seekers and candidates. But today, I want to learn more about trends in recruitment, the role of technology, and how Hirect's intelligent AI matching algorithms, inbuilt chat and verification features, how they collectively make it possible to schedule interviews within the app and connect candidates with decision makers incredibly quickly. Ultimately, how technology can transform that lengthy process of finding someone and recruiting someone to your startup from months to days. Well, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US, where Stephanie Lovell is going to talk about tech in recruitment, Metaverse trends in recruitment, and much more. This is a great one, this. We have a lot to get through, and I don't want to reveal too much, so let's get Stephanie onto the podcast now. So, a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. Very excited to be here. So my name is Stephanie Lovell, and I am the head of marketing over at Hirect. And I am in charge really of all of our go-to-market strategy, all of our lead gen, and really every marketing activity and channel. So we are a newer startup to the US market. We're a Series A. We entered the US market about 6 months ago, but we have another piece of our company over in India, and we've been operating over in India for a couple of years. So we have some proven success over there, but we're excited to jump into the US market as kind of this first and only hiring and recruiting app in the space.
Awesome. And a question I always like to begin by asking is, before we dive in and find out more about Hirect, I always like to learn more about my guests. So how did you get here? What's your origin story? Where did your passion for all this come from? There's got to be a story there, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I actually didn't find startups until a little bit later in my career. So I started out my career in broadcast television with Ion Television. I was a commercial producer for them. I worked with them for quite a while. From there, I transitioned to State Street Global Advisors, which is a very large Fortune 500 company, and was doing some work in marketing production, but more on the finance side, which really led me to my first startup opportunity with Brex. And for those of you guys who don't know, Brex is kind of, they're a fintech decacorn, but I say that to say that they're a unicorn in the startup space as well, from like the actual sense of a unicorn meeting. They have seen huge success in their first few years of business, and we grew very, very quickly while I was there. The team scaled just in my time there from 400 to about 1,000 people. And I was in charge of building and scaling the marketing production department there. So that was a lot of fun. That was kind of my intro into the startup world. I've come across and worked with lots of startups since, and had contact with lots of startups since. It's funny, once you enter the startup world, it's like this whole new world is open to you. All of these connections you didn't realize you had, all of these companies you didn't realize were out there. There's a lot of exciting opportunity. So Brex really got me kicked off and really led me towards like this kind of passion for this space. I think it's really, really interesting. Like I said, there's so much opportunity in startups. There's so much opportunity to like grow businesses and have a really, really tangible impact on the growth of a business in the very early stages, which is just so fun. Like when you get into like a legacy company, there's opportunity to have an impact, but it just doesn't seem quite as tangible as it does inside of a startup.
Oh man, I had no idea you were connected to Brexit in some way. I mean, a unicorn, that's so 2020, isn't it? A decacorn. I remember reading early in the year, it's something like a 12.3 billion valuation now, isn't it?
Yep, they're definitely up there. Yeah. And I mean, they got their start in about 2017. So I know they're working towards IPO soon. So they're kind of the startup story that everyone wants to have, which is great. And that's hopefully what we're aiming for at Hirect. But yeah, it was great exposure for me. The culture there was really great. And again, just the way that they thrive as a startup was just super fun. And that's kind of what I am looking for inside of my career now. Like I want to be able to join companies and bring them from that X to X moment, and get them up and running. And again, it's the opportunity to really have that tangible impact and to feel like you're really making a difference for the company. You're not just a cog in the wheel, you're making visible impact in growing the business.
And it was that path that led you to Hirect. And I'm conscious we will have people listening and hearing about you guys for the first time. So can you just offer a bit of an overview of the kind of problems that you're currently solving in the hiring space with your technology, and also what makes you different and stand out in this incredibly crowded space?
Yeah, so we are the first mobile app for hiring and recruiting that was built for startups and founders specifically. We're now targeting other companies as well. I think we function very well for small businesses, really companies under about 100 employees. So what we're looking to do is really to simplify the hiring process. We understand that the hiring process right now is very cumbersome. It's a space that hasn't really changed over the last 10 years. I think it's remained very neutral. It's remained the same. There hasn't been a lot of innovation there. So we're working to really revolutionize what hiring looks like for companies, for smaller companies, and then hopefully eventually larger companies as well. So again, we're working to really just simplify the whole process. We really directly connect job seekers and the hiring managers through our app. So you're able to directly have a chat with them inside of the app, similar to like an SMS feature. You can have a video chat directly with them in the app. And again, it's all mobile, so it's very easy to use, very accessible. You can source all of the talent through the app. And again, it's really just cutting away from these really like ambiguous processes that aren't super transparent, that are hard to follow. I know we've all had really frustrating hiring stories before, or job seeking stories where you go through like 10 different interviews with 10 different people, and then you receive an offer letter at the end that's like $50,000 less than what you thought it was going to be, or something like that. And it's just so frustrating. So we're really just trying to cut through all of that waste and just be very transparent. We want to really make those direct connections. We want job seekers to be able to really connect with the person they're going to be working for and start that communication very quickly and work towards getting hired very quickly. So I think the industry average right now is about 3 to 4 weeks to get hired on just like traditional platforms. And even that seems a little quick. The average time on Hirect right now is about 3 to 4 days. So again, much quicker. And it offers that kind of level playing field for both companies and candidates, because we're not boosting posts because of sponsorships or companies paying a certain amount of money. It's all just based off of kind of an AI matching that we do. So it's really leveling out that playing field that you don't have on those traditional platforms like LinkedIn or Indeed.
Wow, incredibly cool. 3 to 4 days, man, that's amazing. And of course, if we look back over the last couple of years, many people have been recruited and onboarded online, and some are yet to even meet their colleagues face to face. So I'm curious, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the larger hiring and recruiting space, especially for startups in the wake of the pandemic?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Everything, again, is definitely going online. And I think that does include a large percentage of hiring and recruiting, if not all of it right now. It's definitely more efficient. It's cost effective. It's safer. There's a chance to really manage that unconscious bias. That's a really big thing right now. And we want to make sure that we are doing due diligence there. And I think, I've heard from many companies that even just the costs associated traditionally with hiring and recruiting, having to fly people out to certain places, having to do all the logistics to get them in taxis into the offices and pay for their lunches and go through several rounds of the interviews with people inside of an office and booking conference rooms. Like all of that takes a lot of time and effort and money. So I think it's really simplifying that. So I don't necessarily think that this going online is a bad thing. And I think we've also seen a huge rise in demand for remote opportunities, which is really exciting for a lot of people. A lot of job seekers want that flexibility. They want to be able able to work from home, or they want the option possibly to have kind of like a hybrid environment where they just go in one day a week. But remote work is really opening up the talent pool for companies. We're now able to hire and recruit from all over the country, which is great. Typically, you'd normally be kind of restricted to a certain geolocation. And now you're really not. You can hire top talent from anywhere and really make it work, which is awesome. I know at Hirect, we have talent from all over the country, and it's really cool because we're able to recruit so much quicker because we're able to open it up to that larger pool. Yeah, there's just going to be a lot more opportunity to look into different ways to hire and recruit inside of this online space. So for instance, we recently just had a Metaverse event.
Oh, cool.
It was the first ever hiring and recruiting event inside of the Metaverse. And we invited about 40 Y Combinator startups to come, and they had booths there. And then we invited a bunch of job seekers who were able to come and learn more about those companies, learn more about opportunities that they had open, positions that they had available. And we did some keynotes, and it was really, really cool. And I think we're going to start to see that space continue to evolve and events like that continue to grow as we push towards this more online space.
And what was the general feedback from that Metaverse event? I'm quite curious because everyone seems to be heading that way, and there's a lot of hype about where we're going and what the future holds. But it must have been, it's quite a new experience. So how did it go down?
Yeah, it was really cool. I think the Metaverse is still kind of in a bit of a rudimentary space. So, for instance, the avatars look a little bit like Sims avatars. Yeah. They're just not quite there yet. I think that will continue to mature and grow for sure. It was funny. My team and I kind of logged on the day before the event happened, and we were all like running around inside of the space, and everyone was kind of laughing at the avatars, and people were switching out their facial features and hair colors and stuff. So it was really interesting. We got a lot of really great feedback from our companies and the job seekers that attended. I think it was a really easy way for people to access these companies without having to really leave their homes, which is great. And again, it's awesome inside of kind of the hiring and recruiting space because it really does help to manage that potential unconscious bias when you're using things like avatars to represent yourself. And it just kind of opens up this whole new world. Yeah, I mean, we definitely got some interesting feedback as well. People were like, oh, well, the avatars just look a little bit silly right now, and it's really hard to move around. And then like, if you were using your Oculus headsets, if you sat down in your living room, your avatar would just like sit in the middle of the floor. So there's still some bugs and some finessing that they have to work out, but I think it'll continue to grow. And I think it's something we'll continue to see a lot more of here in the next couple of years.
100% with you, especially as even millennials start heading towards middle age. I think it's the Gen Z and the digital natives that are just going to embrace this stuff straight away. But on that front, are there any unique job hiring trends that you're seeing, especially with the younger professionals that are entering the marketplace now?
Yeah, for sure. So this was very interesting to me when I actually started with Hirect, being a later millennial myself. I have several team members who work with me now who are in that kind of Gen Z space, and they found their jobs on TikTok, which was like actually shocking to me. I was like, wow, you're looking on TikTok for jobs. And it really opened up this kind of whole new world to me that I didn't really know about. And I've actually done quite a few interviews recently on this specifically, because that is kind of a trend that we're seeing. A lot of Gen Z are looking towards platforms that they're already consuming for social reasons, for professional reasons. So they're looking to TikTok, they're looking to Instagram, they're looking to these platforms that they're already on, because they're not going to add additional platforms that they're not already consuming to look for professional work. So a lot of Gen Z is using TikTok. They're uploading resumes, they're looking for companies on TikTok. We specifically, Hirect does a lot of marketing on TikTok for our job seeker side. And I think it's kind of a smart play for businesses that are looking to target Gen Z, because the content on TikTok is very digestible. It feels very organic. It's easy to really reach them in a real way. So I think we'll start to see a lot of employers kind of diversifying the channels that they're on to be able to connect with these job seekers, especially as Gen Z kind of like continues to grow into the workforce. But yeah, it's just interesting. A lot of Gen Z, you'll talk to a lot of them and be like, oh, LinkedIn. I would never use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like Facebook. Like it's so old and outdated. And I'm like, oh, I'm over here like, oh, okay. Well, I still use LinkedIn every once in a while, but maybe need to start to transition over to TikTok.
I absolutely love that. As regards tech trends, is there anything else that you're seeing in the industry? There's a lot of talk about hybrid work and working from any device and any location at any time. But are there any other tech trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think, like we had mentioned before, I think the metaverse is really going to start to grow as we continue to talk about Web3 and crypto and blockchain and all of these kind of very tech forward spaces. It'll be interesting to see how that all evolves. I think a lot of companies are envisioning a future where people can meet inside of the metaverse, inside of like digital office spaces, which will be very interesting. I'm intrigued to see how that will go. I really enjoy working from home, but there is a small piece of me that does kind of miss the in-office camaraderie that comes with being in office with your colleagues. And I just don't know if the metaverse is really going to be that solve, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And I think, again, we're seeing just a lot of things move online. We're seeing a lot of technology come into the space to help solve a lot of issues. Like for us, we use a really awesome AI kind of matching system inside of our platform that helps to really connect our job seekers and our hiring managers. There's just so many like algorithms and AI systems and tools that are coming about to really make things more efficient for companies. And I think that's something inside of the startup world that's really exciting, because you get new startups every day that are kind of like pioneering these new spaces, and they have these new techie ideas or these new algorithms or these new AI systems that are just bringing something completely new to the table. So it's a cool place for us to be in right now. And I think it'll be really interesting over the next couple of years to see how it all evolves.
Yeah, and there's another company, I don't know if you've heard of these, called Gather. And I was speaking with a company that primarily they connect employers with Gen Z talent. But this company were using this platform called Gather, and it's like a virtual space for the office where everyone's a little computer character, a little bit like the Metaverse, where everyone's got their own little avatar, and you can literally just go up and speak to to your team colleagues in like a computer game kind of way. I'll send you a link after the podcast so you can see it, but it's fascinating where it's all heading, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And again, I don't know if that will really solve for us the kind of like in-person camaraderie that we're all craving a little bit of, because it still is very impersonal when you're talking to another avatar. But it'll be interesting to see how it all evolves. Again, I think especially in the metaverse, we'll probably start to see better graphics come about, hopefully, maybe even potential for an avatar to look like you or something like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves and how people adapt to that. Because I do still think there is that need, kind of that ingrained human need to have human contact with people. So we'll see how it goes.
It's interesting you mentioned that about hopefully we'll get better graphics. But my son, I often have this conversation with him, and he says, "Dad, you're all about the graphics and everything looking great." But his generation actually prefer all those 2-bit graphics that we kind of grew up with. And it blows my mind, that he wants to go back to that, and I want to go beyond it.
I know, it is funny. I have some nieces and nephews who just got a Nintendo Switch recently, and they love like the old Mario games and Donkey Kong. And they're like, "These are great. These look so cool." I'm like, little do you know that these were like high tech in the 90s or earlier.
Oh man! And outside of that, can you tell me a little bit more about the growing importance of transparency during the hiring process? It's a big topic right now, but and how technology can help tackle that problem too.
Yeah, definitely. So I think transparency is very, very important. It's something we strongly advocate at Hirect. We require that all of our jobs that are posted on our app include the pay band, so that people have transparency into that right away. I know a lot of different states are now requiring this as part of their new legislation as well. So it's very interesting to see how that will continue to progress. I think requiring that sort of transparency, especially inside of pay, is important in just helping to close the gap between men and women and possibly the pay gap that's happening there, and just understanding what roles are really worth, what different levels of management, what types of roles and pay those equate to, and just understanding even like what your other colleagues in similar positions are making. I think all of that information has been so closely guarded for so long. And now people are really starting to open up about it. And we're starting to see that a lot of people are either very underpaid or very overpaid or somewhere in the middle. And we're trying to figure out how to make it all a little bit more systemized and equivalent. So I think that is super important. I think general transparency during the hiring process is always very important. Having the ability to talk with real people is very important. I think, again, we've all had the frustrations of applying to a bunch of jobs and never actually talking to anyone because your resume gets filtered out because it doesn't have the right keywords or something silly like that. So I think going into that process and knowing exactly what to expect and exactly what's going to happen is so helpful. And again, it just really cuts down on the time that it takes for companies to hire. So it's interesting. I think companies are looking to get more and more transparent because information is so easily accessible now. So if companies aren't forwardly transparent, people will find a way to find the information if companies aren't giving it to you. So it's really just better to be transparent off the bat.
100% with you on that. And you guys also work with high growth startup founders. So I'm curious, from all those conversations that you're having, are there any trends in the kind of problems that they're coming to you asking for help with at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many issues for kind of high growth startup founders when they're looking to hire it. And I think one of them is that on traditional platforms, they don't often have the brand recognition that they need to get kind of the top candidates that they're looking for. So on places like LinkedIn and Indeed, you're going to have the FANG companies, the Apples, et cetera, who are paying astronomical amounts of money for hiring and recruiting. Those are the jobs that are always going to be promoted to people first. And typically the very qualified candidates will look towards those first because that's what they're being served first. So again, this on Hirect, we're able to really create that level playing field. I think it's also really tough for startup founders to fill foundational roles quickly right now inside of traditional processes. Again, 3 to 4 weeks is a really long time for someone to get in very key hands to their business that they need to continue business tomorrow. So they're really looking to get those. They were hoping to get those people in yesterday. So they're trying to get them in as quickly as they can. I think we recently just had an event with several of our founders that have utilized the app. And one of them said that he had spent almost $200,000 on recruiting last year, which is just astronomical. And for startups who are kind of still in their seed or potentially a Series A round, that's not feasible to say that they're going to spend $200,000 on recruiting talent that's actually just essential for them to do business. So that's very frustrating. That's something that a lot of startups are trying to solve. And I think right now too, we're definitely in a job seekers environment. So typically, I mean, any interview I've done in the last 4 months, every single one of the people I've interviewed has multiple offers on the table. So I think it's really interesting to see how a lot of startup founders are trying to get creative with their compensation packages, with their benefits. You're going to see a lot of startups offer some really unique things that traditional companies probably won't offer inside of their packages. Things like, maybe it's Grubhub gift cards every day for a lunch, or maybe it's like at Brex, they did a subscription to the Calm app for us. At Hirect, we do biweekly breakfasts virtually together. There's just little things that startups are going to offer to kind of differentiate themselves because people are just receiving so many competitive offers, which is hard. Again, if you don't have that brand recognition that these other large scale tech companies have, you really do have to be creative in how you're positioning and offering a position to someone.
And what about yourself and indeed Hirect? What's your big focus right now? I appreciate it's probably not too much you can share, but is there anything you can about the road ahead?
Yeah, so we kind of in Q1, we had a very large scale out of home campaign that went live inside of the Bay Area. It was actually one of the largest in Bay Area history. So we're really, really targeting the Bay Area right now, making sure that we have a lot of brand recognition with those startups, with those founders, to let them know that we are there to support them, that we're a tool that they can utilize to really get people in quickly and efficiently and not at the cost of traditional platforms. from there, kind of looking into Q2 as we're now entering Q2 and more towards Q3, we'll work towards going more nationwide and continuing to help Hirect become recognizable and trustworthy and hopefully a household name in the hiring and recruiting space from a nationwide perspective. But as we know, there's a lot of large players in that field. So it's going to take a lot of work, but we're excited to tackle it and excited to see where it goes. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. Again, we're really trying to decentralize this space. We're trying to get people away from the traditional platforms. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all comes together. I think there's a lot of keys in the market that are exciting for us. This kind of like trend with Gen Z moving away from traditional sources and platforms. There's a lot of things that are playing to our advantage. So it'll be exciting to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, it really is an exciting space at the moment. And if the metaverse and chatting via avatars isn't exciting enough, this is the fun part of the podcast, where I always ask my guests to leave the listeners with a personal touch of inspiration by sharing either a book that has inspired them or a go-to song to get their head in the zone, or a song that's just important to them. The big question is, what you're going to leave us with today, and is there a story to accompany your choice?
Oh, well, this is interesting. I actually just requested that my team read a book with me.
Oh, right.
So I'll leave you guys with that book. So it's actually called Working Backwards, and it's insights, stories, and secrets from inside Amazon. So it's very interesting actually for people inside of the startup space, because it just talks a lot about Amazon's early days and how they were able to create a lot of success, a lot of the trial and error. And their thing was kind of like, just try it really fast. If it fails, it's okay, but you have to just keep going and keep trying things. So it's very interesting. It's by Colin Breyer and Bill Carr. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before, but definitely a good read if you're inside of kind of the startup and tech space.
Wow, I'll get that added to our Amazon wish list. And I think you might have just unwittingly created the world's largest book club.
Perfect. I love it.
But before I let you go, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about Hirect, the topics we've explored today, or even how to contact your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, definitely. So you can take a look at our website. It's hirectapp.com. You can also connect with us at Hirect App on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And then you can reach me personally if you would like at stephanie@hirect.us. More than happy to chat with anyone who has any questions or to be able to point anyone in the right direction.
Excellent. And on the app front, apologies, we didn't mention this during the main interview there, but on the app, is it who would download the app? Is it the recruiters? Is it the people looking for work? Is it both? Just for anyone that's considering downloading the app?
Yep, it's both sides. So both companies and job seekers, you're able to create two different profiles depending on who you are. And then again, it creates those connections directly inside of the app. So both job seekers and companies looking to hire are able to download the app and get started right away.
Well, I love chatting with you today about the description of the app, the problems that you're currently solving in the hiring space, the unique features that separate you from others out there, but also the incredibly cool trends about what you're seeing with younger professionals, Gen Z audiences, and the growing importance of transparency during the hiring process. I love what you're doing. I love to stay in touch with you, but more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story today.
Well, thank you, Neil. I really appreciate it.
Wow, we covered so much there, didn't we? From changes in the larger hiring and recruiting space, especially in the wake of the pandemic, but those unique job hiring tech trends that we're seeing, especially around younger professionals, and also the growing importance of transparency during the hiring process. Not to mention all that real cool stuff about Metaverse. And if you are working for a younger company, a younger startup, I also urge you to check out gather.town as well. My son uses it in his workplace. It has to be seen to be believed. But check that out and let me know what you think. And any questions that you might have about anything that we talked about today, any different apps that you're trying in the workplace or for recruitment, I'd love to hear more about them. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. If you'd like to come on here and talk about your experiences using different technologies, let me know and we'll get you on the podcast. Equally, if you've just got a question or anything at all you'd like to share with me, remember you can also send me a direct message on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. But because I do get a lot of spam on those channels, don't just hit a friend request or connection. Send me a little message. Tell me you listen to the podcast, and then I know you're part of our little community, and I'll invite you into the circle of trust. But I'll be back tomorrow with another guest and a fresh topic for us to explore. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.